Right. How freaking great is that song, Fraud Girl? And the video. I just love it. Props to Meg for making that video and AI for making that song. I think it's hilarious. Hope you guys are laughing as much as I am. Welcome to the very first episode of Tell Me Everything. Yay! um, this episode we're going over Fraud Girl Friday. So every Friday we'll be coming at you with some fraud tips, fraud girl hacks, anything fraud trend wise that I'm hearing. Really having guests on the show that's going to be talking about what they're doing and maybe things that they're seeing as well. So it won't just be me always rambling. Sorry. Also having some cool tech come on here, the ones that if I was still a broker, I would use this type of tech. So I'm super excited for this and glad you guys tuned in today. A little bit of background about myself. I was a broker for 8 years in carrier sales. I managed mainly high value freight. So I did a lot of copper and electrical wire and really specialized with Southeast to Northeast, Southeast to Midwest. Had my core guys that I love so much that still talk to today. And they hauled my freight for me and made sure that they knew protocols and things like that with these drivers. Now, of course, every now and then you can't rely on your guys 100% of the time. There would not be load boards if there wasn't. So having to get out there and find other carriers, and that's really whenever the true vetting comes into play. My boss there at the time was super vigilant in learning more about fraud. She always came up with new techniques almost all the time. And as a rep, we'd be like, this is like over the top. And I'm just trying to cover this load. I'm trying to get out of here. But really, I learned so much from her, just kind of knowing what things to look for, what things to listen for. So that's kind of where I got my insight on how to vet and so forth. Now I switched over to my care portal, became a sales rep over here about 2 years ago now. I'm excited because I get to hear a lot of stories. A lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn. So that's kind of why I wanted to start this podcast on the fraud girl side, because I get so many stories and I think those are really important and we just need to share them, right? How else are we going to learn from each other and get better? And then hopefully the bad guys are just not listening to my show because we'll be giving lots of tips and tricks. All right, guys, today we are going to be going over the Nintendo Switch, the 3,000 of them that were stolen out of a semi truck. Pretty wild. So let's jump in. I'll show you the news article here.
If you want to get your hands on a Nintendo Switch 2, you're out of luck. They're sold out in some spots, in others marked way up. Thieves decided they couldn't wait, hitting a semi-truck carrying the consoles.
When deputies arrived, they did determine that 2,810 Nintendo Switch 2 consoles were stolen out of the back of that trailer at some point.
Anders Nelson with the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office says a truck driver was at the Love's truck stop in Bennett when he noticed his trailer had been broken into. He told deputies he didn't know these hot-ticket items were in his cab.
Let's pause for a second. First off, it's in Bennett, Colorado, right outside of Denver. That is definitely not a hot spot for cargo thieves. Makes it very suspicious. So it's not like your regular, typical people, unless if they're literally following this driver out. Now, what they just said on here about the driver having no idea about this, let's pray that that's not accurate. I mean, having any type of high-value freight, high-risk freight, drivers need to know this. You need to be vetting your carriers and making sure that they understand the severity of the freight that they have on their trailer. I do know a couple people who prefer to hide that information from carriers, which is wild to me, but they're wanting to hide that kind of to keep pricing low. And then maybe if the driver's in on it or they see, big eyes out there wanting to do something, it takes those chances down. But really, I feel like that's kind of the wrong way to go about it. You need those drivers to be aware of things. They need to know the protocol on how to handle that if they are not familiar. And even if they're not familiar, I wouldn't even cover the load with them. You need a driver who is educated on how to handle high value, high risk loads. And that does cost extra. But guess what? It's not going to cost you $1.4 million worth of Nintendo Switches being stolen because you have a driver who actually knows how to handle his freight. High value freight, I should say. Let's jump back in here.
These got multiple pallets full of the Nintendo Switch 2 consoles. No small haul.
Yeah, they retail at $499. The cost to Nintendo is just over $410. So either way you look at it, it's well over $1 million worth of merchandise stolen.
Exactly right.
Steve Beatty is a computer science professor at MSU Denver. He says don't expect those swipe switches to show up on Craigslist or at pawn shops.
Because they're stolen, I would expect them to head to the dark web pretty quickly, unless they're shipped out of country.
The anonymous spot to buy and sell, feeding a demand.
And it took me about 2 minutes to find switches for sale. Okay, so it's half price.
If you end up with the stolen Switch, Beatty says these devices each have a serial number that police and Nintendo can track. When you log in, you have to register that number. That's how you play games, get updates. Nintendo, he says, can then track your device.
Nintendo does have the capability of what we call bricking the device, and that is to make it non-functional.
So that's wild, right? Nintendo can actually track whenever somebody's logging into their information. So if you do happen to purchase a stolen device, basically they will find that out. I don't know, knock on your door. Who knows what they do? To me, I feel like that was almost the same scare that they used to say back whenever we were jailbreaking music, right? What was that called again? LimeWire? Yeah, I think that was LimeWire that I used, making all those fake CDs. Basically, like the purchaser, I don't feel like would be getting in trouble, but I do feel like they at least would be telling them how they had that happen to have police being able to investigate further. I know just talking to my California Highway Patrol friends, that's kind of part of the way that they're looking at things. They even see like shops set up where it's like in a random thing and they have just stolen freight everywhere in there and you're buying things for like way cheaper. As a consumer, it's like, oh gosh, that's awesome. And I see a deal. I want that. But really knowing if you're in the logistics industry anyways, knowing like, hey, this is for sure stolen. I mean, that's why they're offering what $260 it just said for a Nintendo Switch that's worth 500. What we're going to be going over today as well, and we'll be touching on this kind of this episode and next episode with the 4th of July coming up. I really wanted to make sure you guys know how to handle this type of freight. Hopefully you do. Hopefully, shippers are asking, making sure that you guys do know these things. But let's go through this. If there is a high value load, pre-loading, pre-tendering, pre-sending out a rate sheet, pre-getting this carrier involved, you need to make sure, confirm the value, talk to the shippers, make sure that you understand what type of insurance requirements there are, even talking to your insurance agent and saying, hey, because it's electronics, is there other policies that have these type of exclusions? Is there things I'm needing to ask each insurance policyholder whenever I'm vetting a carrier or getting a new carrier involved? Because it could be a carrier that you use day in, day out. You love these guys, are the best, but they do have that on an exclusion list. So it's super important to know that if that's a commodity that's common. Whenever you are talking to a carrier, making an additional phone call, verifying with that insurance agent that it is for sure covered. Honestly, what's going on out there too is there's some people out there that are showing the exclusion list, saying that they're monitoring that. To be super frank and knowing what I know about how insurance monitoring works, there's no way that that's 1,000,000,000% accurate. So don't take a risk on that. Still make that phone call, verify, because somebody can add on the policy. Like for instance, I did copper for 8 years. So I know like you can call and say, hey, I want to add copper as a non-excluded item, paying extra for that, but then immediately turning that off right away. That way they're not getting hit for that additional charge, saying, oh, sorry, the load got canceled and I never had to do that. You can go ahead and take that off my policy. Knowing that information right away is huge. So make that additional phone call, make sure it's not already on their excluded list. And even if they add it onto their policy, I wouldn't even go through with that. Now, if you are doing high value freight like this, definitely having a contingent policy that's going to cover that as a backup. I know you can even pay for a per shipment type of policy where like only on your high value freight, you kind of have additional coverage outside of your normal coverage. That way your regular insurance, broker insurance is not going through the roof because you're covering such high volume. So I know there's a couple different people out there. I can, if you're interested in needing insurance like that, I can send you some information there. Hit me up on LinkedIn, but making sure that you have that additional coverage. Other thing is making sure that the pickup and delivery times align with standard transit. Honestly, if it's high value, similar to like this Nintendo Switch program, really you should be having a team on this. This load should have never stopped. It should have never even had the chance to have somebody leave that trailer. Kind of like the picture showed too, like it was half the trailer and it looks like they completely unwrapped the pallets, grabbed them off of there. I mean, that's a lot of time that they're in that trailer unloading. That driver was not just taking a shower. I mean, he was not at his trailer. Maybe he would live there and it went home or something. Who knows? Making sure that whenever you're scheduling this, that either is a straight through run, especially if we're talking $1,000,000 or more in the commodity, making sure that that's a straight through run with a team. Verify that it's a team, both drivers on the phone. Talk to the shipper. Hey, I need to make sure two drivers on here, tracking both phone numbers as well as tracking ELD. To me, you can't really even have enough sessions on tracking. We'll get into tracking too on another episode. I definitely want to deep dive into the tracking things that go into pallets. So hopefully having that going on site and seeing that too would be pretty cool. Also, sourcing carriers, do not post high value freight on load boards. Come on, people. Even like the city and state going here to there, these guys know what lanes they're running. They understand where the high value manufacturers are. So if you are posting stuff like that, you need to make sure that the city is not exact city and state for pickup or delivery. You really want to make that be offsetting and then really almost selling it where it's like at least one city away. That way, whenever you're talking to, it could be like a bad guy carrier that you're actually talking to, giving that load information out, trying to pre-sell it to them. So make sure that you're giving a little bit different information whenever you're doing that until you know that that carrier is a trusted carrier. Also, with that insurance, going back to the carrier's insurance, is making sure that their insurance coverage is A plus plus really rating on AM Best. So making sure that they have that type of proper insurance too. Lastly, doing an additional check on that carrier, calling their FMCSA phone number, having a service to vet them, checking everything you can possibly check on somebody, make sure they can get that done. Next episode, we're going to be continuing this talk track, talking more about what to do with high value, high risk freight, different ways that you should be vetting that, different tips and tricks on that as well. So we'll be jumping into that on the next episode on Fraud Girl Friday. Thanks, guys. See you next week.